live. Welcome to another live stream. Well, if you had any doubt that we were heading towards World War III, I think those doubts should be assuaged following the speech that was delivered by the president last night. Now, I'm not going to get into too many of the details of that speech, except that it indicated that we're headed to war. I mean, it felt a lot like George W. Bush's Axis of Evil speech to me, and it basically seemed like a sales pitch for the military industrial complex as we head into this conflict. The markets are beginning to react to this, folks. The gold and silver price have been moving quite significantly since this conflict broke out. We've got today the price of gold actually touching up over $2,000. It's come back a little bit off the highs, but gold did go over $2,000 briefly. The silver price also moving pretty significantly here. We've got silver up to 23.54, and this is just the beginning, folks. The fact that gold and silver are beginning to respond as you would kind of expect them to on the verge of a major war and likely a huge amount of inflation, which I'm going to get into that here in just a moment. But the fact that they're responding as you might expect is a sign, I think, that the dynamic here is shifting, that investors are beginning to realize just what is in store for us. Now, remember, you can buy your gold and silver at sdbullion.com. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. If you'd like to support this channel, a great way to do that is to support our sponsors. Now, let's examine a little bit of what Biden said. This is just a brief portion of the speech, but I want to play it for you because I think that this is a good indication of what's about to happen.
Let me be clear about something. We send Ukrainian equipment sitting in our stockpiles. And when we use the money allocated by Congress, we use it to replenish our own stores, our own stockpiles with new equipment. Equipment that defends America and is made in America. Patriot missiles for air defense batteries, made in Arizona. Artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and so much more.
All right. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you. If you want to hear this guy talk about why we need to go to war because it's good for the economy, then check out the video. It's a worthwhile speech to check out. And I mean, it was highly disturbing to me. It makes me think that we definitely are about to experience a significant inflation. We have some updates on the current situation that I'll get to here in just a moment. But first, I want to address the point that he just made there. I mean, he's telling us that this is going to be good for the economy because, you know, all these weapons that are going to get purchased are going to be made here in America. And we're going to be giving our old equipment away, and then we're going to be replacing it with new equipment. So that should be good for the military too, right? Well, a few points here. First of all, you know, all that equipment that we have that we're giving away, when it was manufactured, when it was made, prices to make that stuff were a lot lower. So this is going to cost a lot to replace because, of course, supply chains are disrupted, material prices are higher because of rampant inflation. So we're going to be footing the bill to replace all of this equipment. It's going to cost a lot more to replace than it cost to make the first time around. Also, you know, all of this is going to be highly inflationary. So a couple years down the road or a couple months down the road, when inflation is running out of control and Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen or the president are all shrugging their shoulders going, well, we don't know why this happened. And I don't know where that accent came from, but it's just, you know, these guys are like doofuses. They're going to be telling us that we don't know why there's so much inflation. Well, first of all of the money that's going to be spent to buy these equipments, to buy these replacement equipment, it's going to be printed. We don't have any money to buy this stuff. It's all going to be borrowed. It's all going to go onto the national debt. That is going to be very inflationary. The other thing is that all of those materials and all of those, all that labor that goes into building these things, it's a huge opportunity cost. It's, you know, the people building bombs that are just going to blow up and destroy wealth and destroy things could have been producing things that would actually be useful to Americans. But for all of the Patriot missiles that are made, in the U.S. by all these great blue collar workers who are going to benefit from all of this. Well, those workers could have been making things that would actually contribute to the supply of goods and services, but instead they're just making bombs. So, it's an opportunity cost there. And also, all the chemicals that go into these munitions, all of the raw materials, all the lead, all the copper, all the steel, all of that stuff is materials that is going to have to come out of the supply of goods and services. It's going to be a bunch of government borrowed money bidding up the price of all these raw materials. So this will have a significant effect on inflation. And, Biden doesn't seem to mention that, but that's Bidenomics for you. It's true that it's possible that we could see a, short-term benefit from this. That's typically what it looks like when you borrow a ton of money from the future and spend it into the now. It brings liquidity into the system. Of course, that's something which is desperately needed at this moment because we're on the verge of a massive financial crisis here. So if you're wondering what the motivation for this war is, that should give you some kind of an idea. And then, Biden talked a lot about the arsenal of democracy. And of course, this is nothing more than a sales pitch for his military industrial complex cronies who finance the campaigns of all these politicians. So, I'm sure that the politicians have plenty of shares of all these various military industrial complex merchants of death in their portfolios. But yeah, don't buy the spiel here that this is going to be good for the economy, folks. This is Bidenomics. This is going to mean everything is going to get a lot more expensive. Of course, if the conflict expands, if it broadens, then that is going to make everything far more expensive than just the borrowing and the destruction of war, because the price of crude oil is going to skyrocket and shoot through the roof, and that's going to affect everything. Now, if you want more signs that this conflict is on the verge of becoming a larger regional conflict, let's take a look at a few of the headlines recently and see if we can get some idea of what they may mean for us moving forward. So the first one here is from the AP, and pardon me one moment. I have a little drink here. I need to do that on the live streams. We've got the U.S. military shoots down missiles and drones as it faces growing threats in a volatile Middle East. And this is specifically referring to a U.S. ship. Sorry, I guess I can't get a picture of the ship. This is like just some stock footage. But they're referring to a ship that shot down missiles fired from Yemen at Israel. So a U.S. Navy ship in the vicinity shot these missiles down. Doesn't seem that alarming, except for the fact that those Yemeni rebel groups, the Houthi rebel groups, I believe is their name, are funded and trained by Iran. Now, when you consider that in context of this headline, drones attack a military base, a U.S. military base, in southern Syria, and there are minor injuries, that's not a good sign. Of course, troops over in the Middle East right now, for whatever, agenda that they're there, sure make a nice accessible target for our regional enemies. These are likely Hezbollah attacks since they're in southern Syria. And then also, you have got this one. Got one more here. Oh yeah, rockets and drones hit Iraqi bases housing U.S. forces. So you have got these Iranian-backed militant groups that are operating out of Yemen, operating out of Syria and Lebanon, operating in Iraq. They are beginning to coordinate their strikes against U.S. forces in the region. Now, if that isn't a sign of an imminent, broader conflict, especially when taken in the context of everything else that's going on. I mean, this is not in a vacuum. We've been leading up to this in a very significant way. And one thing I want to mention here, this is back to the precious metals, but this conflict now has been ongoing for about 2 weeks. And I know in the title of this video, it says gold and silver prices surge. Now, gold is up about 0.5% today. So I know somebody is going to see this and leave a comment down below that says, oh, I'd hardly call a $12 move in gold surging, right? Well, look at the monthly chart for gold here, folks. This bottom roughly corresponds to the terrorist attacks, the Hamas attacks on Israel. Look what gold has done since then. It bottomed out around 1830. It's moved up to over $2,000 today. Now it's come down a little off the highs, like I mentioned, but it did move to $2,000. That's almost a 10% move in a period of 2 weeks. So, yeah, gold and silver prices are, in fact, surging on this World War III development. And, silver today was outpacing gold. It was up over 2%. This is a sign of something to come here, folks. Gold and silver, when they start moving up, and I believe we are on the cusp of a huge bull market move here in the gold and silver price, because I think investors are beginning to get the idea here. But first, look at what happened with the rest of the market. All the stocks in the red, okay? All the major stock indexes in the red. 10-year yield coming down a little bit. Safe haven bid into U.S. debt. We all know that, well, I believe, let's all know, I believe that these bonds are not going to prove to be the safe haven investors believe them to be. But look, you got the 10-year yield declining, gold and silver moving up. Gold and silver here are catching a majority of the safe haven bid here, I believe. And I think that's a dynamic that is going to accelerate as more inflation becomes inevitable. It's already inevitable, but when investors begin to realize that this whole Fed inflation fight, this thing is not going anywhere. And the moves, as I was mentioning in gold and silver, sorry, got a little sidetracked there. The fact that silver is moving faster than gold today, both in the green, but silver up 2%, gold up 0.5% here. That is indicative of what we're going to see when this breaks out. That's why I still like silver. It's still my favorite number one asset right now, my number one most undervalued asset in the world right now, if you ask me. Again, it's not financial advice. I'm just telling you my thoughts on it. But this stuff is still so cheap relative to gold. Silver's down to 23.54. Gold's just about going to take out 2,000, and I think once it does that significantly, it's really the 2,100 level. Once we break that, it'll be to the moon, for gold and also for silver. That's just my forecast in light of the fact that we've got this massive escalatory conflict in the Middle East. We're on the verge of massive inflation, and investors seem to be getting the idea now. Do me a favor. We're at 327 people in the live stream, 65 likes. That is awesome. I appreciate that. If we could get that to 100, that would be even better. I think it's important to get this information out there to warn as many people as possible. Despite what the president tells you, the war that is about to hit is not going to be good for the economy. You need to be doing things to protect yourself. Now, I'm not telling you what that means. Everybody's situation is individual. A few things you might think of: getting some hard assets, getting out of debt. Times are still relatively good. It does seem like we are right around the corner from World War III, but who knows? I mean, these things can play out slowly. It might not happen for a year. It might not really go down for 2 years. There's still time to, get a side hustle, save some extra money. Don't, make frivolous expenses right now. Now is not a good time. Now is, when you want to be preparing, when you want to be squirreling away extra resources, when you want to be preparing for the opportunities that are to come, because all the people out there right now who are financing, cars, big screen TVs, watches, jewelry, you name it, all this stuff that people are potentially buying on credit right now. Now, I think most people are probably ringing up their personal debt, buying just the basics, because most people are completely tapped out. But to the extent that people are buying those, unnecessary, more frivolous items now, a lot of people are going to be defaulting on that debt. A lot of people are going to have to sell that stuff and take a huge haircut. And so, I think that there are going to be opportunities for those of us who are prepared, for those of us who are in hard assets, because even though the price of everything will likely go up in the coming inflation, I believe that gold and silver will be moving much faster, and they're going to gain purchasing power relative to all of those other assets. And then, paper assets are just going to be toast, I think. Crude oil today was up in the green most of the day, taking a little bit of a breather here, $89. I think that maybe just because it had a big run up recently, needs to take a little breather. There could be some news there that I haven't seen, but I haven't seen anything to indicate that crude oil is going to be coming down in a meaningful way anytime soon. I expect it to be going much, much higher. Let's talk a little bit about why inflation is going to get so much worse, and in light of some of the things that Jerome Powell just told us. So, this is the headline from Yahoo Finance here. Powell sets the table for November pause, warns of more rate hikes if economy heats up. And so, one of the things that he recently told us, this is at a speech at the Economic Club of New York. He said, additional evidence of persistently above trend growth or that tightness in the labor market is no longer easing. This could put further progress on inflation at risk and could warrant further tightening of monetary policy. Now, it's interesting when you hear Powell talk. He talks about how growth or labor market tightness could contribute to higher inflation, but he doesn't mention hundreds of billions of dollars in deficit spending that goes towards warfare. It doesn't take a genius to understand that warfare is an inflationary thing, that borrowing tons of money from the future and spending it into the now, chasing a finite pool of goods, that's very, very inflationary. And yet he doesn't mention that. It's the growth and the tight employment market that you got to watch out here for, folks. It's not the massive destruction of wealth brought on by war and the same amount of paper currency chasing a now smaller pool of stuff and wealth. No, it's the fact that too many people are employed. That's what is driving inflation here. According to this clown world type economics that Powell seems to espouse. Now, here's the thing that he mentioned that actually means something, though. He said, given the uncertainties and risks and how far we have come, the committee is proceeding carefully. And so that is being interpreted as a sign that we are going to get another pause at the next meeting in November. And look at this. This is mind-blowing right here. Not only did his comments cause a more dovish outlook, but now when we look at the CME FedWatch tool, okay, this is what is being anticipated for the next November meeting of the FOMC. Now, nobody thinks there's going to be a rate hike. 0% chance of a rate hike, because look at this. This is the current federal funds rate, 525 to 550 basis points. 96% of people seem to think that's going to stay. Now, there's a 3.8% indication that we're going to get actually 25 basis point rate cut. If war breaks out, it's entirely possible you might see a rate cut, because what better cover for the Fed to cut rates than a global war, a multi-front World War III? That's the perfect cover to cut rates. And I believe that the Fed right now is desperate to cut rates. You have a massive liquidity crisis brewing in the financial sector. Every time the yield on the 10-year bond moves up, every time the rates move up by 1 percentage point, the unrealized losses that these banks are sitting on in terms of low yielding US debt that they're holding, in terms of low yielding mortgages that they're holding, all of these instruments lose value on paper when the rates move up. And right now, the banks are sitting on trillions of dollars in unrealized losses. If there's a bank run, if they need liquidity, if they're forced to sell those assets, they're going to have to realize massive losses. And the Fed understands this. I'm sure they're sitting by ready to launch an enhanced bank term funding program, to launch, stealth QE if things start to fall apart. But if they can avoid a collapse by cutting rates here, then, from their perspective, that's great. I'm sure they want to cut rates. They want to allow inflation to run out of control. First of all, you got to understand, I know that the Fed has its mandate, but that's not the real Fed mandate here. The Fed mandate is to transfer wealth. And one of the best ways they do that is by inflating the currency. That has been the name of the game since 1913 when the Federal Reserve started. That's why the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power since 1913. Okay, that's not price stability, folks. That is constant and guaranteed devaluation and debasement of the currency. And that's what the Fed likes to do. They really only have one tool, and that is the printing press. And that's why I think there is now not only a consensus that there will be a pause, but a small portion of investors believe there will be a rate cut. And if the war runs out of control, and if we're talking about, what did Biden just request? $100 billion funding package for Israel and Ukraine. If it breaks into like a regional war over in the Middle East and Iran gets involved, if the Straits of Hormuz get closed and we have to intervene there, there's a reason we've got two aircraft carriers moving into the Mediterranean. The USS Gerald Ford's already there. The Dwight Eisenhower is on its way. If that happens, I mean, we're going to have to spend a lot more than $100 billion. Let's put it that way. I mean, what did the global war on terror cost? Trillions, trillions. And, we just got out of the Middle East. Well, it looks like we are going back in. I mentioned earlier that Biden's speech last night kind of reminded me of the axis of evil speech that George W. Bush delivered back in 2002. And, that was the speech that kicked off 20 years of involvement in the Middle East. I suggest, if you're not familiar with that one, go watch the speeches one after the other, and you'll see some similarities there. But we're headed towards a major conflict, folks. The Israeli invasion of Gaza, from what I understand, has just been greenlit. It's about to kick off. That very well could be a trigger for these Iranian-backed militant groups who now, as we covered in today's live stream, are beginning to operate in concert. They are beginning to unify their purpose. They are attacking U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East. You've got Putin. He's running MiG-31s over the Black Sea armed with hypersonic Kinzhal missiles. You got an aircraft carrier sitting there. You got plenty of U.S. assets spread around the Middle East. I mean, this is a recipe for a very significant escalation. And it's been in the works ever since February 2022, when Putin invaded Ukraine. Of course, you could say it's been in the works. You can pick your date. But this has been building for a long time, and it's very likely that at any moment we could see an event occur. Keep your eyes peeled for it. We just had the U.S. State Department issue a worldwide caution. I've never seen one of these before. I mean, this seems unprecedented to me, saying that due to increased tensions in various locations around the world, the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, the Department of State advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased cautions. That's pretty funny. There's suggested things here. Stay alert. Enroll in the Smart Traveler program, and then follow the Department of State on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, that'll keep you safe, folks. No, we need to be getting prepared here, folks. We need to be doing things to protect ourselves physically. We need to be doing things to protect ourselves financially. We need to be doing things to insulate ourselves from the shocks that are right around the corner. And we've got 466 people watching right now. To me, that is very heartening. That's amazing. That's higher than we usually get on these live streams. And that is a sign to me that people out there are waking up. And I think that's also the message that we can get, that, investors are moving into gold now. It's almost $2,000. It's going much higher, folks. It is going much higher. The price has moved up almost 10% from the lows. This decline was a head fake. It was a huge buying opportunity. And, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but I did mention that I thought the decline was a huge buying opportunity and that we'd be kicking ourselves for not buying more. I mean, I certainly am at those low prices. And I think that moving forward, we're going to feel that same way about $2,000 gold. Now, again, this isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I am telling you what I'm doing. I am putting my money where my mouth is. For everybody out there who says that gold and silver are going to crash, they're going to go to nothing, let me know how big your short position is against the metals. I would really be interested to know, because, I put my money where my mouth is. Some people say, oh, you've got sponsors, and I do have a sponsor. I have SD Bullion as a sponsor. They're a great sponsor. It's where I buy most of my gold and silver. It's where I bought most of my gold and silver before we ever had any kind of sponsorship relationship, because they have good prices and good service, and I've always had a good experience with them. But, I'm not selling gold and silver personally. I've never sold an ounce. I've been accumulating it because I think the writing's been on the wall for a very long time about where this economy is headed, and that is towards massive inflation. We've got $33.6 trillion debt. I haven't even looked at the debt clock today. It might be over 33.6 for all I know. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 33.7 right now. Do me a favor, look at the debt clock and put it in the chat what the debt is right now, because it is shocking how fast the debt is exploding. And if you listen to the speech that Biden delivered last night, we ain't seen nothing yet, folks. The amount of money that is about to be borrowed from the future and spent into the now is going to blow your mind. I mean, I don't think anybody has any idea how much currency is going to be created to finance this war. $100 billion is just the beginning. And, $100 billion is more than the defense budget of the largest European militaries. So keep that in mind. These are very large sums of money, and any amount of aid going into war is a lot of money when you're broke, which we are. That's why it all has to be borrowed. That's why the US debt is exploding. That's why the yield on debt is soaring, because investors are beginning to realize there's no way that this amount of debt can be paid without devaluing the currency. So you've got to have higher rates to compensate investors for buying this debt. Also, the supply of the debt is exploding. That's why right now we've got a 10-year yield that is at the highest point since 2007, before the great financial crisis. Look, this is like a fourth turning level event, folks. We are about to witness the kind of shocks to the global system that, probably nobody has in living memory. I doubt very much that there's too many people alive that remember a time of upheaval greater than what we are about to live through. Right now, things are still relatively calm. Right now, there's still time to get prepared. But, there's going to come a turning point when it will be too late. And remember, everything that you can do to prepare now, it's like the 1 to 100 rule. Everything that you can do to prepare now, it's going to be 100 times easier than to do it after that point is reached. You can go out and you can buy food now. It's inexpensive. You can buy canned goods. Yes, I know the price has been rising a lot. It's not that food's cheap, but there's still time to get prepared. You can buy a big 20-pound bag of rice for $25. That's enough calories to feed you for a while. I think that there's going to come a time when people will regret not having done that. And that's why we need to follow these events. We need to stay on top of things. We need to get prepared. Don't be scared. Just get prepared, folks. That's all you got to do. Whether World War III breaks out or not, it's completely outside of our control, if you ask me. I mean, I think that the writing's already on the wall. We just need to take our warning and do what you can with it. And what that's going to mean for individuals is going to be different. But don't pay attention to the folks who tell you this is going to be good for the economy. Don't pay attention to the normalcy Normans out there. That's a little shout out to Canadian Prepper. That's a funny character he makes. But seriously, pay attention to the folks with the normalcy bias. I mean, you might be telling your friends or your family that it's time to get prepared, and they're probably going to look at you like you're crazy, because the majority of the population here just is got their head buried in the sand. Their face is shoved into TikTok. They're not paying attention. And it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise when this happens. Massive inflation is going to catch a lot of people by surprise. A lot of people probably don't even have the faintest idea of, how inflation really comes about. I mean, if you listen to Jerome Powell, he tells us now we understand how little we know about inflation. I mean, he plays dumb on it too, but I think he kind of gets it. It's just that's his job, is to inflate the currency. But a lot of people, think it's just a move up in prices that is inexplicable, or they believe the scapegoats. Of the Putin price hike, etc. Well, we're about to get the Iranian oil embargo price hike. We're about to get the Strait of Hormuz price hike. We're about to get the World War III price hike, and that's going to make the Putin price hike look pretty tame by comparison. So get prepared. You don't want to be somebody out in a mob trying to buy the last roll of toilet paper at Costco. You want to have everything you need in place ahead of time. So I don't give advice on this channel, but I do urge you to consider getting more prepared. I think that it's always good to be prepared because, hey, worst case scenario, if, it's not worst case scenario, it'd be best case scenario, actually, if, World War III is averted, because I don't want to say, told you so, when, the dollar is debased and loses its status as the world reserve currency. I want that not to happen. It's not going to be pretty. I mean, even if you're prepared, it just means you're going to suffer less than the folks who are not, but that could be a significant difference for you. So anyway, this one's going kind of long. We're at 30 minutes. Please smash that like button. We got 461 people in here, 187 likes. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in, for helping spread this information. Leave a chat below. Leave a comment. Let us know what you're doing to get prepared. Let me know if I'm wrong. If I'm just being an alarmist fearmonger here, tell me. I mean, I don't think that's the case, but I always like to hear what you have to say. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I will catch you next time. Stay safe and happy stacking. Smart Silver Stacker out.